Got a lot of people coming on right now. Just gonna wait and let everybody get on here and then we'll get started. So wish I could see all your pretty faces. Looks like we're gonna have a good crowd today. Exciting. I'm just waiting a little bit longer to get everybody on before we get started. Cheers to the weekend. Okay, just a couple more minutes. Couple more. You know, it's not bad when you're on a Zoom call and someone sends you a text and says, "You look great." I'll take that, but I don't think I'm going to turn my phone over now so I'm not distracted by it. Okay, just one more minute. Looks like we have a lot of people coming on at the same time. For those of you that are just now joining us, we're just waiting for some more people to come on board. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get us started. Okay, everyone. Good morning and welcome. I'm Sheila Bostic, Senior Vice President for Benchmark Bank and proud and loyal sponsor of the Eanes Education Foundation. I'm also your 2020 Chairman for the Westlake Chamber of Commerce. For those of you that are joining us for the first time today, the Westlake Chamber is a non-profit business organization, and we serve the greater Westlake community, and that includes Rollingwood and various parts of Travis County. Our quarterly meetings are typically held as a luncheon at Austin Country Club, but thanks to COVID, we had to cancel the May Community Luncheon. And today's webinar is our first ever attempt to conduct our luncheon virtually. So we're super thrilled to have over 100 attendees today, and I'd like to announce a few dignitaries who have joined us. State Representative Donna Howard, State Representative Vicki Goodwin, and the Mayor of Westlake Hills, Linda Anthony. Before we hear from Dr. Leonard today, I'd like to spend just a few minutes on chamber business. I'm always so proud of the work that is done by the chamber, and even more so now with all the challenges we are encountering during the COVID-19 pandemic. I'd like to take some time to recognize some member businesses, give out a couple of awards, and share how the chamber is navigating through 2020. First, a shout out to our chamber partners. These are members who have invested in the chamber and our Westlake community at the highest level of membership, and we absolutely could not run our programs nor manage the great work we do without them. Please hear and accept my gratitude for our chamber partners. Next, I'd like to recognize the chamber's board of directors. As a 2020 chairman, I'm incredibly grateful to my board for their hard work and commitment to the Westlake community. They too have been impacted by this pandemic. However, they remain committed to their volunteer board service and continue to guide the direction of our chamber. This is not the kind of year that I saw for myself as chairman, especially since we're celebrating our 25th anniversary this year. But working with each of these board members, as well as our incredible executive director, Kathy Hoover, has brought some true sense of accomplishment to these challenging times. And moving on quickly, it's award time. Each quarter, the board recognizes our most outstanding member who gives generously of their time and talent. Since our May luncheon was canceled and the board was not able to recognize member of the first quarter, I actually get to award two members today. The first winner previously served on our board and then continued to work really hard for us after she completed her term. In January and February, she led a committee who procured items for what proved to be our most successful silent auction for our signature event, the Westies. Proceeds from the auction funded grants given to the Westies Nonprofit of the Year, Young Citizen of the Year, and Young Entrepreneurs of the Year. So on behalf of the board, I'd like to award Shannon Lassiter of Supreme Lending with our Q1 Member of the Quarter. The member of the second quarter goes to one of our valuable ambassadors. The Chamber relies on the Ambassador Committee to steward our membership. They serve as hosts and our lead volunteers our many events throughout the year. And just as important, they check in with members to make certain that they're receiving the ultimate value from their membership. The winner of the second quarter is an ambassador who's done an amazing job of checking in on our members during the pandemic. Voicemail doesn't slow her down. She just continues calling until she makes contact. She has a soothing, positive, calm demeanor. And it's no surprise that our members would enjoy hearing from her because she's Dr. Pam Monday of Austin Relationship Repair Shop. Congratulations, Pam, for being awarded member of the second quarter. My final recognition goes to today's sponsor. Our meeting today is presented by Primrose School of Westlake Hills. We'd like to thank owners Christy and Jared Black for their ongoing commitment to our community. Many of you may not know that Primrose has remained open and offers a much needed resource to parents, especially during a pandemic. They provide safe childcare by taking the necessary precautions and creating a place where kids can be kids and have an opportunity to have fun, learn, and grow. Now we're going to play a video, so feel free to adjust your volume.
Our job is the most beautiful job in the world. Every day, in communities all across America, we help people see something new, something special that doesn't just last a split second, or a minute, or an hour. It lasts a lifetime. Primrose Schools, where light bulb moments happen.
Primrose cares for infants to pre-K and is conveniently located on Bee Cave Road behind Sway Restaurant. Christy and Jared, thank you again for sponsoring today's community webinar. Now I'd like to shift gears and share how the Chamber has been navigating the pandemic since the shutdown in March. We started the year busier than ever with Dr. Matt Patton of Angelou Economics, who shared their 2020 forecast. I mean, who could have predicted what was to come? But it's pretty amazing to remember Dr. Patton discussing the virus in China and sharing how they were closely monitoring the deadly impact this virus could potentially have on our world economy. I mean, honestly, it still trips me out when I think back to that luncheon and the predictions that were made. Later in January, the Chamber got to celebrate Westlake's football state championship win by sponsoring the championship parade. Go Shaps! What a wonderful and fun time that was for the Shap Nation community. February at the Westies was one of the last times we all got to be together. The Westies is the Chamber's signature event and was the most successful Westies to date with a maxed out crowd at the Hotel Grand Duca. It was an honor to recognize the shining stars of Westlake and ultimately award those businesses and individuals who made the biggest difference in 2019. And in true Chamber style, we also managed to welcome new members to Westlake with a ribbon cutting for Bitterman's Deli, Amagi Bank, American Shaman, and nonprofit Foster Angels. I think we can all agree that we accomplished quite a bit before everything came crashing down in March. We were wrapping up for the Golf Classic when the shelter-in-place order went into effect. As we all had to in our own personal lives and businesses, the Westlake Chamber had to figure out a new normal. So in April, we changed our in-person events to virtual Zoom meetings and stay-at-home socials. Even during COVID, we continued to stay busy by averaging 3 events per month. We've led discussions on recruiting and hiring during COVID, the future of our workforce, handling the crazy stress that we're all going through and feeling, and being camera ready. Admittedly, I might have missed that one. But we've also had a ton of fun networking through virtual cheese and wine tastings, and those I did not miss. Moving on in May, we helped celebrate the class of 2020 graduating seniors. And in July, we had to cancel our most celebrated community event, the City of Westlake Hills July 4th Parade. So instead of a parade and large gathering, our board sponsored some decorations to demonstrate our pride and patriotism. Throughout all of this, the Chamber has been there to monitor and distribute information to our business community. We've shared government resources and programs and public health developments, including links to the CARES Act, SBA programs, unemployment laws, and so much more. As for what is next, We are super grateful to our humanitarian committee, which is currently running a canned food drive for Central Texas Food Bank. You'll see donation boxes throughout Westlake with a goal to collect 1,500 cans. My husband has actually done the shopping for us over the past several months, so I admit to having a lot of cans that I'm anxious to share with those in need. I hope you will too. And finally, for some really fun and exciting news, I am thrilled to announce that we have rescheduled the Westlake Golf Classic to October 5th. If there is any in-person event we can give our Westlake businesses, it's a golf tournament. We want to thank our title sponsor, Wharton Insurance, for returning a third year. Other sponsors include University Federal Credit Union, Darling Promo, and Thundercloud Subs. This year's tournament will look a little different, of course, as we take all the necessary precautions, but what a fun and exciting way to get out and network. Registration is open on the Chamber website, and we hope that many of you will join us. As you've seen this morning, I truly enjoy recognizing those that make a difference in our community and in our Chamber. One of my most favorite ways to highlight our members is through what we call member shout-outs. We certainly know the Chamber's hard work is paying off when we see our members engaging and exchanging business with one another. Stephen Chagalas of Edward Jones gives a shout out to Office Depot. Karen Crane and her staff came through quickly with business cards. Now, Chamber members, don't forget to take advantage of your Chamber discount at Office Depot. Suzanne Barton of Wharton Insurance gives a huge shout out to Darling Promo, who has helped them many times over the years with various promotional items. And to one of our most hardworking board members, a shout out to Heather Fraley of State Farm Insurance from Keller Williams Realtor, Jenna Smith. Jenna's first-time home buyer took the time to let Jenna know how extremely helpful Heather Fraley was in explaining the homeowner's policy on their new home. Well, my time is up. Thank you very much for listening to Chamber Talk when I know you're all so anxious to hear from Dr. Leonard. So without further ado, I'm going to turn the program over to the Chamber's Executive Director, Kathy Hoover.
Thank you, Sheila. Thank you for all that you do for our community. Sheila mentioned the Westies, and as I bring Dr. Leonard on to the webinar, it is very fitting to recognize this year's Westies Nonprofit of the Year, which is the Eanes Education Foundation. It is no surprise that EEF won Westlake's Nonprofit of the Year award for the important work the foundation does on behalf of the school district. It is so important that funds raised by EEF provided a grant of $2.65 million, which is funding 53 teacher and staff positions for this school year. Those are 53 positions funded by businesses and families that the district would otherwise not even have. For this year, 2020-2021 school year, the district will be operating at a deficit of almost $4 million. And this is due to the state funding laws, which cause almost $100 million of our property taxes to be recaptured by the state. That revenue will never make it to the Eanes School District. The donations raised this year through EEF will have a direct impact on next school year's budget, which is so important to understand given the impact of this unprecedented pandemic will have on next year's budget. So I always like to tell our local Westlake businesses that if you want to know your customer, you've got to get informed and you've got to be involved with the Eanes School District, which is the point of us getting together today. To learn more about EEF or to contact them, you can go straight to their website. And I can't imagine a more important and more timely topic for our August community meeting than the opening of the school year in the middle of a pandemic, and how our students are going to learn through a remote and socially distanced environment. And so I want to thank Dr. Tom Leonard for devoting his time to the webinar today and for his transparency to the community. We've collected several questions prior to today's webinar that we'll ask at the end of his talk. Also, the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen is activated. So if you want to submit questions, we will do our best to organize those. First, trying to answer the questions that were submitted prior to the webinar, but I'll be taking a look at the questions coming on as we go through the webinar. So it's good to see you, Dr. Leonard. I'm going to stop sharing my, my screen. So I'll let you share your screen. And again, we appreciate it, and you can take it away.
Well, thank you. And I'll share the screen in a minute, but I really do appreciate this opportunity. I too wish we were all together either at the country club or wherever we would hold the meeting and have a real lunch. And I want to thank the chamber for setting this up, and I want to shout out to EEF. I didn't know they were going to do that at the beginning, but I've got my EEF mug here, Yeti mug, that was given to me at some point, and they are such great support of the school district. Today, I'd like just to start out, I'll show some slides in a minute, and I'll focus on two topics. Obviously, COVID-19, the start of the school year, will be our major topic, and a little bit then on the November ballot and the upcoming, used to be called TRE, but now it's a VA TRE. So I'll spend a little time on that and then try to answer as many questions as possible. Some of the slides you may have seen already if you've been to the community meetings or you've watched board meetings, but there's a few, things change so fast and have been changing so fast that today I actually have some slides that nobody except for maybe 2 or 3 people who helped me develop these slides have seen. And obviously, as the information and facts that we get change, some of the information we're able to share out with you change. So let me go to some slides and see if I can get these up and rolling. Okay, and I want to do, I'm sorry, let me do one other thing really quickly here so I get my screen set in a good way. Okay, that should help. So I hope you can see these slides. Like I said, the two things that I really would like to talk about in order, first would be some of our strategies on how we're dealing with COVID-19. And then I'd like to talk a little bit about Texas, state of schools, and the financial pieces involved in that, like any business, chamber would know that revenue and expenditures drive what you're able to accomplish. So let me just start with a picture, and I've shown this to some before, but this picture is meaningful to me. I found it about 7 years ago. My mom had had a frame picture. She died, gosh, almost 17 years ago now. But I was looking through some of her stuff, and I saw this picture, and I was unframing it. And behind the picture of her 3 children, me being the oldest, was this picture of the first class that she ever taught. That's her in the background. This probably is mid to late 1950s. And this is, I actually have this picture in my hall without the words, of course. And every day before I walk out the door, I actually look at this picture, and it's, to me, it's what I'm about, and it's what we're here for. We're here for kids. And my mom stressed to me right from the beginning that, you know, if you're going to be in schools, it's for the kids first. And if you're going to be an administrator, you take care of the kids, then you take care of the teachers, then you take care of those other people, the nurses, the custodians, the bus drivers, the counselors, all those people supporting the teachers to help them do the job to support the kids. Lastly, administrators. And she said, never forget that if schools are going to work, you need parents supporting them. And I just want you to know that that becomes my focus, whether we are in COVID-19 or not COVID-19. So let's take that and flip it to this year. A couple of, I would say maybe about a month ago now, when we were struggling as we were getting different information from the state and TA and the county and the city and the health department and the CDC. And I woke up one night like at 2 in the morning, and I started thinking, what's important in terms of learning? And I scribbled this on a piece of paper. I said, if you want learning to occur, you need a critical relationship between the teacher and the child. And you want that relationship to be several things. You want it to be sustainable. You want it to be basically the same teacher with the same group of kids as long as you can. You want the most effective teacher you can put in the classroom. You want to have a safe environment. And even before we were talking about COVID-19, we were talking about school security. We've always done fire drills. We've always done all those things. We want to keep things safe. Relationships matter. You want to have an adequate amount of time to work with kids. And that becomes really problematic in this virtual world because of the added screen time. And it's just not the same, and it's just not as good. You want to focus on your critical content, and you want to make sure that you meet the needs of the kids. So I keep that in my mind, and I don't care if we're virtual, if we're in a high blend, if we're in a blended, if we're every other week, if we're 25%, if we're 100%, whatever it is, I think those things still need to be at the root of what we're trying to accomplish. So let me go through a couple of things and make sure it's clear. My staff, my administration, our trustees, we want all the kids in the building as soon as possible. We care about kids, and we recognize that this is not the best environment to be teaching in. Our business is teaching and learning, and right now we do have remote learning, and I'll get into why in a little further down, and there's a chance that it may come in and out throughout this school year. We may not be in total control of that. In March, it was the governor who closed us down, not the trustees, not the superintendent, not the principals, not the teachers. And the first 3 weeks, it will be the city of Austin and the county health, and I will talk about that later. We are keeping our calendar unchanged. You know, some school districts have pushed their calendar out. Austin EISD has pushed their calendar out, and they are lengthening each of their days the rest of the year in order to accomplish the amount of hours they need to get done. We are trying to set up our class lists so that they are sustainable and we keep the same teachers with the kids as long as possible. And we knew all along when we started this that we would have to deal with many governing agencies. So I think it's, in one of our board meetings, Allison Collins, our general counsel, had put together what's changed, you know, since May in terms of the orders and guidelines and rules that we've been under as a school district. And right now there have been probably 14, it's probably higher than that. It may even be 16 or 18 at this point because we're getting a new one, it seems, every week. And that has made it complex. Now, she then showed about 27 slides of all the things that changed along the way. I will not do that to you today. Been there, done that, but I will get you to some of the conclusions of those slides and where we sit at this moment. Right now, this is what we are. It's been adapted a little bit, but the order that came out that kept us in person from Travis County Health is still an active order. And that order still prohibits us from having in-person instruction until September 8th. And that's for all schools in the county, including private schools, by the way. And I know that's a question that'll come up later, and I'll talk about that as well. Obviously, there's been some rhetoric from the governor, from the attorney general, from others, but the governor to date has not issued an order negating any county's health order. It has not been, the county's order has not been overruled by the court, and it has not been rescinded by Travis County Health. Now, they could do that. Any one of those three things could happen at any time, but right now those are the rules I'm operating under. Now, some things are going to change, and I think this will be interesting, and some of this is new information for probably everyone if I didn't cover this even 2-3 days ago. So that's kind of a list of some of the rules. I think it's important to know, it might be important for some of you to know, that I meet weekly with probably 12 to 16 superintendents from the area, and then I meet probably every other week with about 6 to 7 superintendents from around the country. And that's been on a regular basis since March. And then since about early July, I've also been on the county and city calls with Dr. Escott with about 6 superintendents. And I do believe a few things here are going to change. In a conversation just this week with Dr. Escott, he has told us that skill practices are now allowed. And so our football team and volleyball team will be able to start that as soon as they want to start that. So that's a difference. We're also seeing some different things when I show you some of the new orders that have come out from both the city and the county in terms of what's going on. But our discussions with the county, the city, and the health department are ongoing. And as things seem to be getting better, I have some optimism that we may be able to do some things a little faster than we had hoped. including, and I talked to Todd Dodge late last night and early this morning. I cannot say anything, but there's a likelihood of some exciting news coming from him or from our communication department, hopefully within the next couple of days, about adding an extra game the weekend of September 25th, 26th. And that's due really to the change that Dr. Escott is allowing us in terms of starting some of the skill practices immediately. I will go into the waivers and some of that in some of the questions later, but I wanted to show you this. Last Friday, and it came out really about Friday, 5 p.m., we got more information. And often the newspapers will give you some of the information, but they're operating with 500 words or less. These documents are 27 pages long in some cases, 35 pages long, and there are multiple documents. And some people saw Austin Public Health's interim guidance, but they may not have read all the other orders. The order that is most restrictive to us right now is this order 202000815-019. I don't know where they come up with these numbers, but that order affects all the schools in the city of Austin. So it may affect some of our schools, but it may not affect some schools that are further west of the city. And in that order, really, it's almost the last page. I think it's almost page 25, and it's Exhibit E. And this is where the city basically, you can see the wording there. They say you must follow an approach unless lost to funding, and I can talk about that later. And they describe percentages, and they are basically locking the stages of the pandemic to what they want to have in terms of on-campus population. And you can see at stage 5, they want us totally virtual. Stage 4, 25%, and you can see it going up. Right now, the county has us at stage 4. I believe the numbers are more in line with stage 3, but it's multiple variables that they are looking at. And again, we don't control the declaration of the stage. That is controlled by Dr. Escott and his team. I wouldn't be the one to be controlling that. But I wanted to make sure you see this is the order we're operating under right now. But there is some flexibility here, and I do think there are some options here that I think we can utilize. Again, where is Dr. Escott with this? Well, when I've talked to him, his biggest concern is that we get into stage 5 and some of his medical facilities start being compromised. And I know the disease, and some people will point this out, is different in different zip codes throughout the county. Dr. Escott's worried about the hospitals that serve all of those zip codes and really wants to make sure that no matter what zip code someone is coming from when they go to the hospital, that the hospitals are able to handle them if there is a situation. So those are their definitions, and that's also connected to CDC's definitions. But I just wanted to make sure that I at least stated that. That is his main concern. That's his job. My main concern is educating kids. So we have a little bit of different priorities, or different focus would probably be a better word. I want all the hospitals to be working as well as he wants all the hospitals to be working. But my focus is on kids, on teachers, on sustainability, and on education. So the other thing that's interesting in the guidance that's coming from the county health department, they want a phased-in approach. And whether we were to independently say, well, we just won't follow their guidance, I think it's interesting that there's some logic to a phased-in approach, and I will talk about that in a few minutes as well. So what they want you to do basically is, in our conversations, if you go from 0% in building, go up to 25%, they recommend you staying there for at least 2 weeks, and then depending on what's happening with phases. But if things are good, move it up another 25%, stay there 2 weeks, move it up another 25%. And that's something that what we have in our plan, and I'll show you that in a few minutes. And again, the fact that things seem to be getting better may allow us to move at a little bit quickened pace, but we'll see. I showed this slide. I think we all know Nick and Drew, probably the two most famous quarterbacks. We'll see how Sam does that have come out of Westlake High School. But I use this slide in just trying to describe the playing field that we're operating under. The rules have been changing for schools multiple times, and they continue to change for us. And it's almost like if you were trying to go out and run plays in a football game and, you know, the officials tell you, you know, sorry, I know you were practicing offense with 12 players. Now you're going to play with 6 for this quarter. And the next quarter, they tell you now you're going to play with 15 on offense. And instead of the football field being 100 yards, it's going to be 200 yards. And as they keep changing this, it becomes problematic. And then they say, look, if one of your players sprains an ankle, any player that was within 3 feet of them is now out for 2 quarters. And those are the type of rules that have made it very difficult in our planning. And while that's nobody's problem, and I just want to make sure that you know that our school board and myself and my principals are navigating that type of environment, and it's not simple. This fall is different than other falls. Typically, the rules are not changing for me every 5 days. This year, this fall, they have been changing, and I do believe they may continue to change. If there's any pattern, it's been that rules have been changing every 2 to 3 weeks. Second, this is different. I've never started a school year where I had 30 to 40% of the parents and their students requesting remote. That's not normal. And some of them are requesting it due to underlying medical conditions. Some may have other reasons, but some have underlying medical conditions either of themselves or of a member of their family. That's different. Right now, people may not know it, but I have 130 plus staff members who have documented underlying medical conditions that I have submitted to HR, or they have somebody in their family and they have submitted the documentation to HR. And under federal law, we cannot bring them into the building. They will need to work remote. And while bringing kids into the building, I need adults in the building. So makes it as a different year. And obviously there are precautions that we want to have in place and that are being told to have in place by Travis County Health and also by the CDC so we can sustain in-person learning. You know, in the past, so it was no social distancing period. We would never think of having kids wear masks. Contact tracing, I don't even know if I knew what that was prior to this school year. Self-quarantine, the rules of keeping someone out 14 days if they were in close contact with another individual in the building. That's 6 feet for 15 minutes. All of that makes this a very different year. And whether we like it or not, it will be a different year. Hopefully a vaccine will come soon and that'll change quite a few things. These are the responses in our last survey that was done in terms of how many people wanted different things. Now, the did not respond numbers, we've lowered those. We've kind of individually went out there and found those, but we're still in a situation where we are running somewhere around 60-40. Now, about 2 months ago, that was running about 70-30 or 75-25. So we've seen a shift of about 12-13% now have shifted from wanting to be in person to wanting to be remote. And our goal is to make sure that we honor each group's requests. I'm not saying the people who want in person are wrong or the people who want remote are wrong. I understand that there's people with different situations and different circumstances, and I understand that. And my goal is to give each of those groups exactly what they want and then be able to sustain it as long as possible. A little bit of conversation. So when we knew from the county, and we had suspected this, that we weren't going to be able to return to 100% immediately, we decided, well, we have to figure out some criteria for the first 25% that we bring in, and you can see that criteria listed here. We will be notifying parents in this group probably today, and then there will be some that may say, hey, yes, I'm coming in, but others may say, yes, you've identified me to come in, but I don't want to come in. I've changed my mind. So the process on this will probably take place between now and next Friday of notifying the first 25% that will come in. And then we will immediately go into a cycle of notifying the next 25% as soon as we get into this a little bit. So our team is now working on these categories so that we can transition kids in as safely as possible. This slide you may have seen before, and I'm going to show an adaptation of this slide in a few minutes. Our teachers are working, our staff are working. I'm at the district office right now. Some people are working remotely, some people are in our buildings. Obviously, those who are taking care of our buildings and getting them ready obviously have to be here. It's our intention by the time we get to the end of next week. Well, right now, teachers can come in if they want to come in and get their rooms ready, and they can come in if they want to teach remotely from their rooms. But by the week of August 31st, we are encouraging almost all of our staff to be in the buildings because we got to get ready for the kids coming. But we are under that Travis County health order through September 4th to be 100% remote. And you've seen this slide. You know, when we first made this slide, we were in the depths of stage 4, actually teetering on stage 5 when we first were putting this slide together. In fact, it's interesting, at one point our numbers went into stage 5, and Dr. Escott kept us in stage 4 because he saw the trajectory moving us back soon, and he didn't want to do that. And you'll see that he does the same thing when we're in stage 3 with some numbers in stage 4. He's watching some of the trajectory. But I'm not here. That's his decision, not my decision. I'm going to show you another slide in a minute. But right now, we do want to have some transition period of time because when we get in, we want to be able to sustain it. On the next 25%, this is some of the criteria that we'll be using to try to step it up and get to 50%. And then shortly thereafter, we'll be able to get probably to whatever the parents want, which should be somewhere around that 60-40 number that you saw earlier in the survey. So I won't read these slides to you, but I thought I'd just let you know what my team is recommending to me. This slide is the same one you just saw, but I want to show you a little bit of a variation of it. So right now, we will be remote until September 4th by the Travis County health order. On September 8th, we'll be bringing in 25%. And our hope is to do that and stay with Austin Public Health, which would basically say, make sure you do that for 2 weeks. Get your protocols in place. Make sure the kids are used to it. Teachers are comfortable. Go through the whole contact tracing, see what happens in that domain, and make sure you're sustainable. And then what we're hopeful, and I would say it's my plan, barring circumstances that change that prevent me from it, I'd like to move us up to at least 50% in that week 6. And we've shown you that criteria that we get to that next 50%. But I'd like that to have, and again, give us a situation just as the county recommends, stay there at least 2 weeks. I think there's a good chance that we can then move it up. And I say up to 75%. At certain levels, we don't even have 75% who want to come in, so that might only be 60%. So the up to is an important piece there. By the time we hit week 9, October 13th, or potentially even October 5th, under this model, we would have pretty much the kids and their parents who want to be in the building, and the kids and the parents who want to be remote, staying remote. Now, under TEA guidelines, every grading period, we have to ask people, do they want to change? And we will ask them that. When that happens, the percentages may change. I don't know if the percentages will go up. I don't know if they'll go down. I won't know that till we ask that question again. And that probably would be asked in about week 7 so we could prepare for week 9. I'll leave this slide for the moment. So my goal is to be sustainable whatever we do. And it seems rational to everyone I have talked to and who we are working with that no one wants to come in 100% like certain schools have or certain universities have, and then shut down and wind up being 100% remote immediately. By doing a phased-in approach, I think we have a much better chance of being sustainable long-term. And being sustainable is the only thing that's going to give certainty to the parents and certainty to the kids. I want to talk a little bit about health and safety protocol. I'm not going to read all of this, but we are following all of the guidelines that are being given to us. I'll just let that slide sit there for a little bit. We are putting up sanitation stations in all of our classrooms. Those are being done as we speak. We are going to have desks social distanced, initially, particularly when we're at 25%, because then we have enough room to do that. We are utilizing common spaces. We will utilize outdoor spaces. We're going to do everything we can do to keep things as healthy as possible and keep instruction sustained as long as possible. Hallways, we will stagger people going through hallways, particularly at the middle school and high school. They've always been staggered in some way at the elementary when the teachers line them up and move them from place to place. But we also have increased the passing periods to make it a little less congested, if at all possible, and kids will wear masks in those situations. We're putting signage up. As I walked into my office building today, I saw a sign that looked similar to that. We are blessed. I know this is hard on our kids and on our community, but we are, that we should be thankful, I hope, for some things. Our last bond passed, I think it was like 82% approval rating. And that bond's done a lot for us. It'll allow us to update our technology. We ordered technology in early March. It was nothing to do with COVID-19 at that time. We would have done it either way. And really are in the pipeline ahead of a lot of school districts. My friend in Pflugerville, he and in Elgin, their devices will not come in for their students to be totally one-to-one until November. And in Pflugerville, the teacher computers were desktop computers that were hardwired with all their curriculum materials on them. And when they went remote in March, that became problematic. With our teachers, at least they're on laptops, they have iPads, and most of our community, the vast majority, does have internet access, which gives us a whole lot more ability to function remotely, albeit we don't like remote. It's not what I want, but at least we have an ability to do it much better than most school districts out there. Just something I thought, we're going to have people doing self-screening per the guidelines. We're going to ask people to do that every day. If they have any symptoms, we're going to ask them not to come in. And again, we will be communicating with the health department as we get any, hopefully not, but if we do have confirmed cases, and we will follow their guidelines in terms of self-quarantine. I thought I'd show this. Things have changed. Travis County has recently changed, as of last Friday, has changed their issuance on some of these items. CDC has remained pretty consistent over the last couple months. TEA has fluctuated a little bit. And we are just trying to be as healthy as we can and follow the best guidelines so we can be sustainable as long as possible. I am concerned about the social, emotional well-being of both staff and students. This is a hard time. It's harder for some than others. Some are in a better position than others. But I think anxieties are there, uncertainty is there, fear is there, and we need to take care of each other. We have done certain things with our staff to try to support them that we've never done in the past, and we will continue to do that. And it's important that parents stay in contact with the teachers and in contact with the principals if there's a need that isn't being met. And that's whether when we're 100% in person or whether we are remote at this period of time. So I come back to this statement. That's the objective. I come back to that picture. That's what I believe is important. And I want to see kids back in that world soon. And I'm going to move off of this agenda item. I'm going to come back with questions because I know there's plenty of questions on that. But I also promised I'd do a little bit on Texas as a state of funding and running schools. So let me transition to that, and then I'm done. And then I promise I'll just, we'll open it up for any questions. And if need be, if I need to pull up a slide to answer some questions, I'll be happy to do that as well. But let me go through this a little bit. Out of the last legislative session, the big deal was HB 3. That affected a lot, and mainly those are the key elements. It affected how the money flows to schools in Texas. And the money determines your staffing levels and your compensation levels. And that's basically how we run. It did this. It is actually lowering the tax rate. The tax rate is being compressed, and you may have seen that on your own tax bills. But that fourth bullet point is extremely important. It did create some significant inequities in terms of funding for staff, and I'll show you that in a second. And that fifth bullet point is also extremely important. Access to golden pennies, the ability to keep more local revenue local. There were questions about the state's ability to sustain HB 3. They were originally thinking they were going to have a $3 or $4 billion surplus this year. Now that has gone to at least a negative $4 billion deficit this year at the state level. So I think when we get to the next legislative session, it's going to be difficult for the state. And that fifth bullet point connected to golden pennies will be the way local communities will be able to navigate that if they have any ability to navigate it. HB 3 was not good for certain districts like Eanes. It really focused on districts with low socioeconomics, and it focused on districts that were fast growth. We did not fall into either one of those categories. An example of that, if you look at how much money HB 3 gave for teachers, librarians, counselors, nurses, the amount of raises that the law required and how much money the state gave us for those raises, if you take the districts around us, Eanes ISD, for every $1 we got out of HB 3 for employee compensation, Austin ISD got $6, Leander got $6, and Lake Travis got $7. Again, we're the highest socioeconomic district in that list, and we are the slowest growing, well, maybe not against Austin, I'm not sure about Austin, but Leander and Lake Travis are definitely growing much faster than we are due to the land and the building that's happening in their area. Recapture was going up. At one point, we were at about $102 million. HB 3 lowered that initially, but under HB 3's laws, that number will continue to go up. And one way we can influence that is with golden pennies. This alludes to the budget deficits that we may be looking at. This is if we do not get any golden pennies, you will see that we're talking about significant deficits going forward. If you look at that line, about 3 from the bottom, those would not be sustainable any long term. But the good news of HB3 was it did allow communities such as ours to access 2 more golden pennies. Now, the last time we did that was a couple of years ago. And when we did that, it passed at a very high percentage rate, upper 80s. And that allowed $3 million to stay locally, and it actually lowered our tax rate, lowered the tax rate in that swap and drop. But again, the point was the community decided to vote. We asked them for permission to do a swap and drop. They said yes at an overwhelmingly rate. I mean, typically anything passing in an election at over 80% is considered a landslide. And it did allow our taxes, more of our local money, to stay in our classrooms here. What is being proposed in 2020 is to keep the tax rate exactly the same. And so whether this passes or not, it would not affect the tax rate, but it would allow us to take the percentage and recapture and decrease it. And it will also allow us to have $3 million more that are paid locally stay local. And we'll be explaining that in future meetings at a different time. It does have a big swing in our budget. It makes it much, much more manageable and keeps us with a fund balance over 20% for a much longer period of time, even if we give compensation increases and don't decrease staff in any way. This slide I won't get into much detail, but it basically shows you what will happen with the tax rate. Notice in 1920, the M&O tax rate for this community was at $1.13. In all of these scenarios, whether the golden pennies were to pass, not pass, we're going to be around $1 or less when we get to 23, 24. So this is just a nutshell. Our current tax rate is $1.13, which is 99 cents for M&O, 13 cents for debt service. And if the new tax rate is approved, if the voters approve what is called a VA-TRE, I didn't come up with that terminology. If the voters do approve that, the tax rate will actually be 1.1164 total. And it would mean about $3.3 million would stay local. So I just wanted to make sure you had a chance to see that as well. You know, relationships matter. My mom's relationships with these kids mattered. It was touching to me when she died in 2003, all the letters that were sent in from kids that she taught over the 38 years who said that she had an impact on their lives. Teachers matter, schools matter. What we do matters, and what we do as a community matters. And yes, this is a trying time, and I know there's a lot of tension. I know there's people who are strong in one camp, strong in another camp on a variety of issues. I'm not worried about camps. I want to get kids in school. I want kids to learn. I want kids to play on fields again. I want us to be in a situation where things get back to normal. But right now we are in a pandemic, and I'm not operating under normal circumstances. I've never started a school year where I knew that I was going to have 130 employees, mainly teachers, not in my building. Never have I started a school year in that situation. But I'm going to get through this. We are going to get through this because, yeah, those kids probably are now in their 70s, at least, I would imagine. But there are other little kids that have those faces, and we have an obligation to them. So I'm going to get out of the PowerPoint, if that's okay, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen. If a question leads to the need to show a screen again, or if somebody wants me to, I'll pull a screen up. But Kathy, I know you had a list of questions. I'll do my best. I'll try to be concise and not waste a lot of your time. I know you're all busy, but I got time, so.
Well, and thank you for allowing plenty of time today at our webinar for the questions. So, yeah, so what we'll do is we'll try and address as many questions as we can that were submitted before the webinar. And then I'm also looking at questions coming in during your presentation as well. So we'll try to get to as many as we can, do the best. And I'm going to also try and organize them to where we don't have a lot of duplication. So the first question I've got that I received is how many school-aged children, being ages 5 through 18, have died from COVID in Travis County and in Texas? And were these healthy children or children with comorbidities, unfortunately? How does this compare to the number of deaths caused by the seasonal flu? And will the district be using these same standards that are using for COVID with the seasonal flu? So a few questions in there, but comparing the standards that we're using for COVID versus the seasonal flu.
Yeah. Well, let me back it up and then kind of work it down. Okay. Actually, let me start with the last question in there. Are we using this? I think it was something like, are we using the same standards as seasonal flu as we would for COVID-19? And the answer is no, we're not. Obviously, seasonal flu, we don't have everyone wearing masks. Seasonal flu, we are not required to, if one kid in a classroom had seasonal flu, we wouldn't have anyone who was in close contact, by definition, self-quarantining for 14 days. We wouldn't do that. We would contact tracing. We don't do that in seasonal flu. We wouldn't be in a situation where 130 teachers who have underlying medical conditions or their family members have underlying conditions wouldn't be in our building under seasonal flu. I'm not going to debate, is COVID-19 worse than seasonal flu or not? I know there's people out there on either side of that question. I am not a medical doctor. I'm not going there. That's just not where I'm going. I am going to operate under the rules and what the CDC is saying, and I'm going to try to abide by that as much as possible. I know there's a lot out there about kids, and I do think our knowledge of COVID-19 is changing over time. I do think it's changing. Maybe it'll be changing better, maybe it'll be changing worse. But I think we need to understand that when you think about a school like, well, let's take Westlake High School. Westlake High School is going to have its highest enrollment it's ever had in its history. We've had multiple transfers coming in from private schools, where kids are in private schools who are residents who are coming to Westlake. We've had more people moving into our district that are coming into our school as well. But when you think about a school that big, it's got 2,900 students this year and probably another 300 staff members. For me to be operational, I not only need all those 2,900 kids there, but I need those 300 adults there as well. And even if this is less impact on kids, I also have to have the teachers there. And I need to have them there in a sustainable way. So, yeah, this is going to be different. It will not be the same as seasonal flu. Now, I will tell you one thing that's going to make this much more complex. If the flu season is bad, there are some of the same symptoms with flu that were with COVID-19, and there will be some people who may not know, do I have flu or do I have COVID-19? And the county is saying, and is saying that if you have these certain symptoms, stay home. And I think there are times in the past where someone might have a little bit of a headache or a little bit of stomach flu or something of that nature, and they may have gone to school. I think you're going to see less of that among staff and among kids, and that may again make it harder to operate. But as far as the exact number of kids who may have died, I'll leave that to the county to give that information. I don't have that information.
All right, our next question is, many other school districts are open or are opening with on-campus learning, including Highland Park, Memorial High School. These are schools that we frequently compare ourselves to. Also, the Houston EISD superintendents are working together to bring students back to the classroom. Someone else submitted a question about Lake Travis starting in person on the 8th. Have you spoken with these schools, and how are they starting the year in person? How can they figure it out a way to get their children back to school? And we cannot.
So there's a lot of pieces to that. Let me try to dissect it into a couple pieces. Tom Triggs, the superintendent of Highland Park ISD, he's also in our consortium. I think I talked to him last about a week and a half ago. There's some things that are very similar, and there's some things that are very different when you start looking at these different areas. First of all, we're operating under different rules because we're operating under different counties, under different cities. Lake Travis is not operating under the City of Austin order like we are operating under the City of Austin order. In Highland Park, while surrounded by Dallas, the City of Dallas is its own municipality. So it's different rules that they're operating under. So those places, in those ways, they're different. Highland Park's an interesting situation. They just went through a major building piece. In fact, we were up there with some members of Envisioneens. Must have been in the, gosh, it was before the pandemic, so it must have been January or February potentially. And, you know, they are at a capacity right now. They built with an additional 20-25% capacity. They just opened a brand new elementary school, so they have a luxury of some space. They're also very small. They do not transport students with buses other than the kids with special needs. They have no transportation, no busing. So that's a little less logistical for them than it is for us. But other than that, we're operating under basically the same way. When they bring everyone back, when Lake Travis brings everyone back like we will, and when Highland Park brings everyone back like we will, it'll still be pretty much the same situation with social distancing. It will still be the same situation with masks as much as possible. And we all want to stay sustainable as long as possible. There have been some schools in Texas that have opened up, and because of one reason or another, particularly particularly the contact tracing and then certain people getting sick, that have really gotten to the point where they have significant numbers of staff and kids out, to the point where TEA is coming in to take a look at those different districts. We're operating under the same guidelines. We're basically, once we're open, we're open. And I think when we get to the point where we hit sometime in mid-September, you're going to see it looking very, very similar amongst all these districts. And whether one was better or worse, time tells. Right now, I want to do it in a safe and sustainable and reasonable way, which I think is, one, following the county's order that I'm under to September 4th, starting with 25%, and then bringing that up as soon as we can.
And then we also have another question about private schools, and if they're currently able, a private school is currently able to get around the Travis County remote school learning.
Not prior to, they're the same boat that we're in.
They're the same.
Yeah, until, not until September, September 4th, but that's a Friday. Labor Day, September 7th. So for most people, September 8th is the date that anyone can start getting at least a little bit more beyond that. But they would be under the same rules we would be under in terms of being remote right now.
Right. The Travis County health officials' guidelines for stage 3 were reached in July. They didn't officially call it stage 3, but that's where the numbers were. And recent news say that hospitalizations are down and not being counted anymore. So what is the justification to continue to stay closed if the numbers are down?
Yeah. Well, first of all, the school district doesn't determine the stages. So no one asks me in the morning what the stage is. I think I said earlier in my presentation, there was a time when the numbers indicated we should have gone into stage 5, and the county did not move us into stage 5. They kept us in stage 4. I think some of the numbers are indicating right now we should be in stage 3. The county is keeping us in stage 4. So I think they're taking an approach on what's going on with the trajectory. Sometimes they're seeing numbers before we're seeing numbers. I know they're looking at the number of kids and the number of people. Let's please not kids. I don't want kids in hospitals, but the number of people in ICUs, number of people who are on ventilators, the infection rate, the amount of positives per day, and so we don't determine that stage number as a school district. That's determined by the county. And I know, again, I'm not going to justify their methodology. That would be for them to justify. But I do know it has fluctuated, and it is not as clear-cut as one might think. It's, again, but they've gone both ways. Sometimes they've kept us at a lower stage when the numbers said higher. Right now, they seem to be keeping us at a higher stage when some of the numbers are staying lower. Right or wrong, they would be the ones who would have to justify what the stage would be.
Why did you request a waiver from the TEA to keep schools closed past early September when more than 70% of the parents in the district voted to want to send their kids back to school and the numbers are declining and there's a very low risk of COVID?
Well, a couple reasons. I wanted as much flexibility as possible. I wanted to be adaptable. I don't know what the situation is going to be on September 8th right now. I really don't know. I don't know what the infection rate is going to be on September 8th or September 14th or September 20th. I really am not sure. And I think having that flexibility during that period of time was good for the community. Look, I want was it 70% or 60%? It doesn't matter. That number's changed a little bit over time, but it doesn't matter. I want that 70 or 60 or 80% who want to be in. But I want them to be in for a long period of time. I want them to be in for a long period of time. I don't want 70% to be in, and because we haven't tested things out, we haven't got our protocols in place, things aren't working well, that all of a sudden we're shutting down, like you've seen multiple universities need to do recently. I want to make sure we come in with a common sense approach so that we really can give those 70 or 60 or 80% exactly what they want, a sustained experience in person. A sustained experience in person. They don't want one day with 70% in the building and then the next week we're all out. I don't think they want that. I think they want to be in for a long period of time. And I think if we use this common sense phased approach and kind of go up 25%, up to 25% for about 2 weeks, add another 25%, with the numbers being good, and then kind of move ourselves into that later threshold, will give them the consistency for a long period of time.
Okay. This next one is more about the remote learning and how long the kids are going to be on Zoom or online. I have a sense that the new online structure of school is very similar to traditional in-person structure. This results in my kids being on serial Zoom calls from 8:30 a.m. until 3:30 p.m. with a break for lunch. I also have the sense this structure is driven, at least in part, to ensure we received our share of TEA funding for the district. Firstly, is this a fair assessment of the situation? And secondly, if we are not able to get back to in-person school in September, what is the likelihood of the TEA relaxing some of these requirements and recognize we are in a unique pandemic situation and perhaps their requirements need to be adjusted to accommodate the situation for the benefit of everyone? And then we've also received a similar question during the webinar. The CDC and the American Pediatric Association recommends only 2 hours of screen time a day, but our kids are online for 7 plus hours a day.
Yeah, so there's multiple pieces there. So if we were in person, which would be a whole lot better, whoever wrote the first question, I'd ask a follow-up to them, and I would say, I assume you're talking about middle school or high school, because the way that question is phrased, they're describing middle school or high school. Elementary is different. So there's a lot to this question, okay? I really want to answer it, but I also want to not go forever with it. And I could pull up slides of this schedule, that schedule, but I don't think I'm going to go there. I'm going to try to keep it more global. You know, when we were in March and we all of a sudden went online and remote, we had completed 3/4 of the school year. And in the last quarter, we have a couple weeks that are devoted to testing. So we had gotten through probably almost 80% of our curriculum for most of our kids. In fact, for AP, we were even probably further than that, advanced placement courses. And we could kind of get ourselves to the finish line of that school year without too much loss in learning. The trouble we have right now is we don't know how long we're going to be in this situation for sure. I want to get us all back in, but there may, November, who knows? I can't tell you what's going to happen there. December, who knows? And so we decided that if we were going to do anything to keep particularly the secondary kids on track academically, it goes back to that slide that I showed that said you need adequate amount of time to cover some curriculum. I used to teach AP Calculus. If you cut my time teaching AP Calculus to kids down to 1/4, I would not be able to adequately teach them that curriculum so that they would be able to do well on that test and then go on to college. So we've talked to our staff, how do we do that? And then how do we balance that with screen time? So I'm going to start with a high school or a middle school kid. There's an 8-period day, basically, that we have. And in that 8-period day, between each period, we've set at least a 10-minute break in terms of each period. So while they're online, they at least get a 10-minute break after every 50 minutes. Then they have a lunch, and that lunch is 50 minutes, or roughly 50 minutes. And then you add 10 minutes on each side of that, so they've got almost an hour in there as a break. And then what we did was, remember, your average kid is not taking 7 classes or 8 classes. Most of our kids are taking roughly around 6. And when you eliminate, we also then said on a certain day, we would just have office hours for kids. So on Mondays, math may have office hours. On Tuesdays, science. On Wednesdays, English. And I may not have the exact departments, but the way we're doing it. So that gives the kid one more period of time or chunk during the day where they're not online completely while we're fully remote. But that's what our staff, our principals, and our teachers said they needed if they were going to try to keep the kids on track during this school year. So that if we do 3 weeks remote, which we're required to do, we won't be 3 weeks behind in terms of the curriculum. And I understand it's trying to find that balance between screen time, remote, and trying to cover as much of the curriculum as we can and keep kids on track. So that is, that's what it is. If you stated that they would be online from 8:30 to 3:30, that won't be straight. There'll be an hour something in the middle there for lunch. There'll be 10-minute breaks periodically through there. They likely will have a free period for another 50 minutes. And then one of their departments or one of their curricular areas will probably be on one of those day schedules. So they'll have a much more relaxed office hour type, tutorial type situation with teachers if needed. So that's part of it. We're trying to balance a world that just doesn't work. It's hard, when people say they want all the instruction that they've been getting before. We're in a remote world right now that we can't get out of legally. We're just in this remote world, and they don't want screen time. That becomes extremely problematic, or too much screen time. So, and again, the other piece I've noticed, and this happened last spring and it also happens now, we're giving your teachers flexibility. They need to read the class. They need to see what's going on. They may tell Jimmy, Johnny, Sue, look, you take off here for a little bit, go work on that project. And that's okay. A teacher may end a class a little early. That's okay. So we're letting the teachers have that same discretion that they typically would have during the school year. To the point of what TEA will do in the future, boy, I don't know. I don't know. I'm really hoping that I don't need to worry about them doing something in the future. I'm hoping by around week 6, 7-ish, we have as many people who want to be in the building and things are operating as normally as we can have them operating, and we won't have to worry about what TEA will do in the future. But if they make a change and they say, want to limit screen time, it will limit the amount of content we'll be able to cover if we are forced to be remote. So a long answer. It's a complex question. There's a whole nother dynamic at the elementary level where the screen time is much more limited right now, but that's the best I can do in a short answer.
Okay. All right, next question. Why would parents in EISD support the election in November to reallocate the tax dollars when they are having to make the decision to move their kids to private schools or hire tutors?
Mm-hmm. I would say this. First of all, we have kids from private schools coming here as well right now. So that's going both ways. I would say this. Now is not the time not to support teachers. Now is not the time not to support school districts. Yes, it's stressful. Whether people vote yes or no on in the November election, their tax rate's going to be the same. And the dollars that would be coming into the school year, yes, some of them would help this school year, but the vast majority, this is going to be a $3 million plus recurring that's going to help us in 2021, 21, 22, 22, 23, and so forth. We're going to get past this. And when we get past this, we're going to be making a decision based on our budget in January and February, how we are going to staff ourselves in 21, 22, and how we're going to compensate staff. Last thing, I do not want to be in a situation where the pandemic is behind us. We have a vaccine, everything's going well, and parents want to be back in Westlake and want to be at Westlake High School, want to be back at our middle schools, and the staffing or the programs may be in jeopardy because those will be the decisions that the board is going to have to make depending on what happens in the election. So parents are going to pay the same amount of taxes either way they vote. That's their choice. And the school district will be in a better position to serve their needs in future years in one situation versus the other. And so again, that's a choice they'll have to make.
All right. What if any district staff, what if any district staff, including administrations, teachers, paraprofessional, or classified school employees have been added or cut for the 2020-2021 school year?
Yeah, initially we pre-pandemic, okay? Now I know the pandemic started November or December, I guess is when it was starting in China, but it really wasn't on our radar in any meaningful way until February, March, and in March it really was on our radar. We make most of our budget decisions in January and February. In January, I was not thinking we were going to be in a pandemic. I was not thinking we were going to be remote in March. In January, I wasn't thinking that. So, and either were our trustees. Were they right? Were they wrong? You can go wherever you want to go with that, but we weren't thinking that. So we made some decisions based on the budget at that time to reduce approximately 10 FTE or full-time positions. Now, that could be clerical, that could be administrative, that could be teachers. The vast majority of our staff are in the classroom or supporting those people in the classroom. So obviously when we try to do that, most of them were coming out of that area. Since then, the board has given me more contingency staff. So we probably have brought that back. So we're probably only down about 3-ish FTE in terms of what we have allocated for this school year. And they gave us that FTE to manage class sizes and to manage this pandemic. So it's right now our staffing levels from last year to this year, they're down a little bit. But when you talk about having about 1,200 employees, 3 to 4 staff members less across those groups is not significant at this particular time. That said, too, our enrollment is roughly about the same. It has fluctuated up, it has fluctuated a little down, but I think we're roughly about the same. At the high school level, we are definitely up in terms of enrollment. So.
Right. And this goes to the budget. What efforts has the district taken to manage its budget should the November initiative fail?
Mm-hmm. So we've been on a multi-year budgeting process for a couple of years. that kind of allowed us to get to a surplus. I think it was about 2 years ago. We actually had a surplus for the first time in about 10 years. And so what does that mean? It means we will assess what our revenues are in December. We'll be looking then to decide what our staffing levels will be. We make those decisions in January and February at the board level, and then we implement that in February and March by law, and then we either hire staff or we release staff in March and April. All school districts kind of follow that pattern. That's just the way it's laid out. So the situation for the trustees in December, they'll be looking to see what happened with the VA TRE. Did the 2 golden pennies pass or not? If they passed, they'll have less percentage of money they have to send out and recapture to the state. They'll keep the $3 million more local, and then they will be in a better position to make decisions on compensation for staff and for staffing levels for the 21-22 school year. If it fails, and they want to keep a balanced budget, and they will need to get to a balanced budget because we cannot run deficits at the projections right now, they will have to look at cutting expenditures. 85%, I think it's 85 or 88%, a significant percentage of our M&O fund, our revenue, goes to staffing. And the 12, 15% that's not in staffing is pretty much fixed costs. So if we do not, if the golden pennies do not pass, we'll have to make some much harder decisions with that 85% of our budget that goes to staffing and 85% of our budget that goes to compensation. So the conversations will be a little more difficult for the 21-22 school year. And so again, we will see what the situation is in December, and then the board will have those conversations in January, February, and implementation in March and April.
We've also received a 2-part question, 2 separate questions for one person. What metrics will be used to determine the phased-in reopening? And is it accurate that TEA is providing a hold harmless for the first 12 weeks of school in terms of funding by using previous year's ADA?
If it is, it's something I haven't heard 12 weeks. I have not heard 12 weeks, okay? It might be accurate, but I can tell you this for the first 8 weeks. And part of that was reason we wanted to make sure we passed that waiver and could have that transition period. So for that period of time, we will get full funding. And I know that for sure. So that brings us, I don't have the exact date in my mind, but for that, it might be October 13th would be I might be pretty close on that. If I'm wrong by a little bit, I'm wrong by a little bit. But we're good there in terms of full funding, whether we are remote or whether we're 100% of the kids in school. And so that's not my determining factor. Now, when we hit that 8-week period, I was under the impression that it was 8 weeks, not 12. And at that point, we either bring everyone in per TEA or we would lose funding. That may change. Again, the person asking the question stating 12 weeks, I'm not saying they're wrong. The last I heard was 8, but things change and could change again. It could be 16, in a couple weeks. I think TEA is navigating that. And remember, TEA's got to be kind to TEA. There's a lot of different, there's like over 1,000 school districts in Texas. You've got Dallas ISD, which is big, Houston ISD, which is big. But then you've got some districts in West Texas and East Texas that only have 100 kids in the whole district, K-12. So they're operating under some different situations. And by the way, kind of flipping back to a question that was earlier about the Houston superintendents, the Houston area superintendents working together, I can tell you that the Austin superintendents are working together as well. I mean, we are meeting and have been meeting since March weekly. There are differences between our communities, but we all have the same goal, and we all want to get to the same finishing line. We may get there a week or two later, and time will tell who had the best approach in terms of getting there sooner, but we all want to get to the same place.
And when will you know if your waiver is granted? And are you prepared for all students to be back in the building if it's not granted?
The waiver is granted. Okay, so this is just a matter with this type of waiver with the state. If the board takes action, the waiver is granted. It's not a situation where we have to hear back from the state as to whether they have granted it. The local group has the authority to do that. In terms of our phased in, I think the slide I showed at one point, that secondary slide, which is kind of new, kind of shows where I see us being. 3 weeks remote, 2 weeks 25%. Moving it up. My goal is to move it up after that 2 weeks of 25%, and then trying to assess where we are at that moment. But I can pull up that slide again. And what criteria will we use? We'll see, do I have staff? Is the staffing sustainable in the building? That's important to me. I can't have 100% of the staff. I'm sorry, I can't have 100% of the kids in with 20% of the staff. I don't have a way of making that magic work. So I have to look at that. I have to see, and that may be not sick necessarily with COVID-19, but how many are in a self-quarantine state with COVID-19? So that is something I have to navigate. Obviously, the county could come into play. I'm hopeful. The numbers do seem to be going in the right direction. I hope they continue to stay low. But the county could come in, the state could come in if things get really bad in Texas, just like they did in March, and shut us down. So I don't know that will happen or not happen. And then obviously, every 9 weeks in TEA's rules, the parents get to reselect. And so will I have 60% of the parents who want to come in? Will I have 75% who want to come in? Will I have 50% who want to come in? I'll have to assess and make adjustments based on whatever those percentages are.
All right. And here is the last question that we have time for that we've received today is we've heard some mentions that the board and administration may be politically motivated in its decisions regarding schools opening in person. Mm-hmm. Just for the record, does the district have any political alignment or affiliation?
No. No. A trustee, they're not, we don't run trustees as Democrats or Republicans or independent or Green Party, whatever party you want. We do not run it that way. We do not endorse the Republican Party's platform or the Democratic Party's platform. That's not where we are. I will tell you, none of the decisions I make in my office have anything to do with politics. The decisions I make are based on that picture of my mom's class. That's what they're based on. I want kids in school, and I want to sustain it, and I want to keep my staff healthy, and I want to keep the kids healthy, and I want to do it as long as possible, and I'm in a pandemic. And I know there's people who are over here, there's people who are over there, there's people in the middle, there's people who don't know. I don't know all the answers. I'm like a lot of you. I'm reading stuff every day that's different. I'm seeing APA say this and then move here. I've seen the Big 10 go in this direction, the Big 12 go in that direction. I'm not sure who's right. In December, maybe I'll know who's right, but I don't know who's right now. I know I need to keep things sustainable as long as possible, or education isn't going to occur. And I don't know. I don't think that's a Democratic or a Republican opinion. I want kids in school, and I want kids with their teachers, and I want the relationships to form, and I want us to take care of each other. So if that's connected with one party or the other, I'm fine with that. But that's all I want.
Wow, that puts us right at 1 o'clock. So you were able to answer a lot of questions, and we want to thank you for that. I do want to mention that we received some questions regarding the racism issue, and unfortunately, we just only had so much time. The topic was really focused on getting the kids back into schools for the fall semester and the November ballot. So I apologize that we didn't have time to get to that area, and it's a very important area, we all know.
And if you want to go a little longer, I'll answer some, but if you got to cut off, that's fine. That is something that we have a focus on as well. And all I can say is don't believe everything you read. We are a good community. Truly believe that. And we all need to look inside at this moment in time, both as individuals and as institutions. And I want to prepare my teachers for that, and I want to prepare my staff for that. And that's part of the reason we're making the investment we're making. But it's up to you, Kathy, where we go, or if you want to, there's other meetings that I do that parents are able to come into, and
Well, I'm a stickler for staying on time, so I don't want to hold anyone over. And I appreciate that. I do have a question, not to put you on the spot, but I'm hoping that we could get your slides. And so I'll be sending a follow-up email to everyone who registered and attended today. It'll include Dr. Leonard's slides. It'll also include information on our canned food drive for the Central Texas Food Bank. We're going to list our member businesses that are open and accepting your donations of canned food. And then also it'll include information on how to register for the upcoming golf tournament that we're really excited about on October 5th. So with that, I want to thank you all for attending. Thank you, Dr. Leonard. Thank you to the entire school board, the entire administration, all the work you've been doing this summer and getting our kids ready to head back to school safely this fall. We just appreciate all the time and work that you put into this. So,
well, and let me just say, I appreciate the community. I know everybody's not happy. I'm not happy. But I think we got a great group of people out there. And I think you're gonna see that we're gonna get past this. We're gonna be stronger. We're gonna be better. And the Chamber's part of that, EEF's part of that, and Eanes ISD is part of that. So thank you, and I'll sign off.
thank you. Thank you all. Have a great weekend for you all and look forward to that email.